What is that bug? What are you? Can you all go away? You're freaking me out down here. And I think go away! What are you? It's a freaky beetle thing that keeps flying over my head. Itchy nose, probably where the coffee spilled. Shh. Go away! I can't film with you buzzing in my ear! Welcome to another video. Today I will be talking about phobias, which are also known as specific phobias. Phobias are defined as an extreme or irrational fear or aversion, which means avoidance, of something, even if there's no real danger. And the difference between this and other anxiety disorders is that it tends to focus on one or several particular things as the fear. It can affect your lifestyle, so for example, relationships, reduce your self-esteem, limit your work ability, etc. when people go to such extremes to avoid something. So for example, independent walking affects me because I can't go to very many places or do things independently, and it leaves me unable to go out and bond with friends and makes me feel incapable of such ordinary tasks because I'm not able to independently walk. And they can be a sudden development for no particular reason rather than being directly caused by something. For me, that's elevators. There was no preceding issue or fear that caused me to be afraid of elevators, I just suddenly was, like about a year ago. There's always a scale. Some phobias are more intense than others. I'm going to start off by talking about a few phobias I had when I was younger. So this one's kind of embarrassing, but thankfully I was like 3, so it's allowed to be embarrassing. When I was younger, I would say, edge of the blankie all the time, which basically meant corner, like I was afraid of the corner of the blankie meaning blanket, and I needed all the corners tucked in. It might be because I had a thing about things poking me in the eye, because when I was younger, the doctor apparently poked me in the eye. Next, leaves. I hated the crunchiness beneath my feet, and I may have also been afraid to find feathers in them, which is another phobia of mine. Moving on to my ridiculously long list of current fears and phobias. Again, some are more intense and some are less intense, but I'm going to list them all nonetheless. While I was writing this, I thought about the divergent fear landscape, if you've read the books or seen the movies, because I would be in that fear landscape forever, unlike Triss, who had 4 fears. 4 fears? I'll tell you how many I have when we reach the end of the list, and it's a lot more than 4. I looked up the official names to most of these because, first of all, I wanted some, like, official teaching knowledge stuff in here, but I also found it super interesting. The fun part about this is going to be me trying to pronounce the names. Ornithophobia, birds. Ternophobia, feathers. Similar to leaves, I was always paranoid about feathers poking me in the eye when I was younger, and when I was younger I also said that a feather poked me in the eye when I was born, but it was actually the doctor, and that's a way that phobias can, change your life and memories. So now I'm able to touch them and be around them, but bigger ones are still harder for me, and believe me, I know it's ridiculous. It's even ridiculous just to talk about. As for actual birds, peacocks, especially their large display of tail feathers. Turkeys. Zoo story. When I was probably about 4, I went to the zoo in my stroller where my mother pushed me around, and then she left me in front of a fence gate thingy with a turkey, and of course I was tiny, so it seemed like it was huge, and it freaked me out because it was right there and it was like cawing its turkey caw at me while my mother was talking to some stranger, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, but she wasn't paying attention to me, probably because I was one of those kids who screamed and cried all the time no matter what, but it was super traumatic, so that one definitely did have a cause. And then any larger bird or with long tail feathers, but smaller birds like hummingbirds or robins I'm fine with, but I still don't know if I'd want to hold them. Next, zoophobia, which is actually the fear of animals, but it sounds like zoos, so I'm gonna go with that. I've had a lot of nightmares about zoos as well, and they let the peacocks just wander around in there so that they can like chase you, and that's freaky. Let's go look at all the things I fear, said no one ever. Entomophobia, insects. Catsarida, cockroaches. Beetles. Motophobia, moths. Sphexiphobia, wasps. Horseflies, or apparently deer flies, which also take a bite out of you. And basically any insect that can hurt, poison, or kill me. Aquaphobia, the fear of water, and thalassophobia, the fear of the ocean. Orca whales, maybe because the white spot looks like an eye, even though I know it's not. And I heard a story on the news when I was like 6 probably about an orca whale eating the person who was looking after it, and that like freaked me out forever, but I don't know if that was like the start. And galeophobia is the fear of sharks. Great white sharks for me, I think because they have a resemblance to killer whales. Acrophobia, fear of heights. Here's my talking or social category. Glossophobia, public speaking. Enochlophobia, crowds, which is likely linked to social anxiety, and that's next week's topic, so stay tuned. Telephonophobia, and yes, that's the actual name, I know. Talking on the phone, and that's only if it's not a close family member or friend. Didascalenophobia is the fear of school anyway, which I think I had from grades 7 to 8 because I loved school, but I couldn't ever find a reason why I had such anxiety with it. Aticophobia, fear of failure. I am a perfectionist, as you know. Failing a test is not something that I would ever want to do, so I work myself crazy just so I don't. Basophobia, the fear of falling, which is another reason why I haven't walked a lot yet, and it's likely caused by my knee dislocations, because I would fall down when my knees would dislocate, and I wouldn't know when, and it could be anywhere. It would cause me a lot of pain. Trypanophobia, the fear of needles. I would throw literal fits as a child when I would have to have my like yearly flu vaccines or whatever. Metaphysiophobia, the fear of change, and a lot of my anxiety comes from this, because anytime something's different is when I get anxiety, which is similar to the next one I'm going to talk about because it involves trying something new, and I fear it will cause irreversible damage. For example, getting knee braces before my whole operations. That was kind of one of the things that I was supposed to try before I had to do operations, but I just couldn't because it felt uncomfortable and weird, and even though it was supposed to help me, I still didn't want it because it would feel different. It would be a change of how my legs felt when I was walking or standing or whatever. Xenophobia, the fear of the unknown. That's probably the main cause of my anxiety, especially to do with like the meaning or purpose of life and death. I know, it's getting deep. But seriously, and then that, therefore, like when I think about purpose of life and death, that affects everything else I do in my life and causes me even more anxiety, so hopefully I'll make a video on that because it's pretty big in my life. Aphozagoraphobia, being forgotten, for me again that's particularly after death. Bathophobia, the fear of depths. I'm not sure if this is a phobia that I have, but a lot of the things I'm afraid of could fall under that category, like long hallways and the deep ocean. Thanatophobia, the fear of death. Tapophobia, the fear of being buried alive. And cavmophobia, the fear of being burned alive. Fabulous. So ironically, despite the fact that I'm afraid of dying, apeirophobia, the fear of eternity. Does that make sense? No. Welcome to anxiety. I wish I could find that one Tumblr post about floating in space with all the dust and emptiness and it never ending and there's no escape, because it explained me perfectly. Like, why would you want to live if you're just gonna be floating around with all the space junk forever and be eternally bored and have no escape? Like, what? So there's this thing, I'm just gonna include this in here that I just thought of. Wow, no scripting, look at me go. It was a question I watched on a YouTube video where someone asked, would you rather die in the next 5 minutes or live forever? Obviously, I don't want to die in the next 5 minutes because I'm afraid of death, and hello, that's pretty soon. Or live forever, but when there's those options, I do not want to live forever. I'm not saying I want to die, I just don't want to live forever. Doesn't that make more sense? Okay, whatever, I'm getting off track. Agliophobia, the fear of pain. Hence my 3 operations being put off, and I seriously do not know how I survived them at all. I purposely avoid falling and things similar, likely again brought on by my knee dislocations because I'm afraid of pain. Vehophobia, the fear of driving. I could have taken my learner's test 2 years ago, but I still haven't because I don't want to drive, even though everybody keeps nagging me. Thanks, everybody. I want to drive eventually, but like, not now. I'm scared. Maybe I need to learn to walk before I drive. Phasmophobia, the fear of ghosts. But like, who isn't afraid of ghosts, honestly? Ligyrophobia, loud noises. This one especially has to do with fire drills, again, brought on by my wonderful knee problems. Because I could never walk fast enough. If a fire drill went out, I could never walk fast enough. That was before, like, when I could kind of walk. I was afraid of my knee dislocating, and if someone like stepped on or kicked the back of my heel, that could also trigger one, but I still had to get out of the school fast enough. Claustrophobia, the fear of small spaces or getting stuck. So if they're like the tube slides that are dark until you like reach the end, that freaks me out, because if I got stuck in there, I couldn't breathe, it would be dark. No. As for my knees and walking, apparently, interestingly enough, it's an actual fear, like an actual phobia. Like, even though I'm crazy with my other weird knee problems, other people have these too, and that's comforting. Bathmophobia, the fear of walking downhill or downstairs. And I'm gonna put in my update here because it seems like a good time, so I'll also talk about it in my next video, more in depth. However, I told you in my last video that I'd started walking further and better, like uphill, and started with downhill, and I was alright with downhill even though it was a little bit scary, but my anxiety has now caught up with me, and it's getting really difficult to walk even a little bit downhill. So I definitely have a phobia of that now, which is, it's likely because my knees would dislocate a lot anytime I went downhill, and especially if my legs felt stiff or weak would be another main trigger, because that would mean that they'd be more likely to dislocate, even more so, because they'd be weak from not exercising or whatever. And I know that they won't dislocate now, because if they did, they would have before. But still, it's ingrained in my mind that you do not walk downhill. But I have to, and I'm teaching myself that I have to. So anytime I would have to go down a hill, I would walk with my knees bent, because that's the only way I could prevent my knees from dislocating, which I learned by experience. It's really hard to not just like default to knee bent walking, even though I don't do that anymore. Agoraphobia. Although this is also for like social situations and panic attacks, it has been known to be the fear of open spaces. So for me, with walking, hallways, it's these combined with other fears like the fear of falling, failure, and pain that affect my knees and walking. That's approximately 37 fears or phobias that I could think of. Again, some less than others. 37, that's not even exaggerating. Thank you for watching. Bye!